come closer, I'll send you back to whatever pit you crawled from.
I said I wouldn't let them have it, and I meant it.
Good, because today, we fight together.
The bread was 3 days old, hard enough that Harlan Voss had to soak it in tea just to make it worth chewing. He had baked too much again. He always did. Habit didn't leave just because the person you baked for was gone. So the loaf had sat on his kitchen table, untouched except for the piece he'd forced himself to eat that morning. The rest had been waiting to go stale enough that he could justify throwing it out without feeling like he was wasting something that used to matter. That was how his days worked now. Small decisions, stretched thin across too much silence. He wouldn't have noticed anything wrong if it had simply disappeared. But the crumbs didn't disappear. They were there, scattered across the wooden floor in a thin, uneven trail, like something small had tried to carry the bread carefully and failed. Harlan stood in the doorway for a long moment, staring at them. His mind moved slowly, like it always did when something unexpected broke the routine. He looked at the table. Half the loaf was gone. Not eaten. Taken. The door wasn't broken. The latch wasn't disturbed. Nothing forced. Whatever had come into his house had walked in quietly and left the same way. He crouched down, touching one of the crumbs between his fingers. Still soft. Recent. Someone had been here. The thought should have made him angry. It didn't. It made him aware. A different kind of alertness, the kind that hadn't touched him in years. He stood, eyes scanning the room out of habit more than fear. Nothing else was missing. Nothing disturbed. Just the bread and the trail leading away from it. Harlan followed it. Not fast. Not loud. Years of farming had taught him patience, how to move without rushing things that would reveal themselves if given time. The crumbs led through the back door, across the yard, and into the barn. The late afternoon light filtered through the wooden slats, cutting the space into lines of gold and shadow. Dust drifted in the air, slow and quiet. The barn felt different. Still, but not empty. Harlan stepped inside, boots pressing into the packed dirt floor. The trail of crumbs ended near a stack of hay bales, half hidden in shadow. He stopped a few feet away, listening. There was a sound, small, uneven. Breathing. He moved one step closer. And then he saw her. She was crouched behind the hay, small enough that he might have missed her if she hadn't shifted slightly when he stepped closer. Green skin, dull and dirty, stretched over bones that showed too clearly. Bare feet pressed into the cold ground. Knees pulled tight to her chest, like she was trying to disappear into herself. In her hands, she clutched the missing bread, half a loaf held against her ribs like it was something worth protecting. Crumbs clung to her chin. Her eyes lifted to meet his. And she didn't run. That was the part that felt wrong. Children ran. Even the bold ones. Even the desperate ones. They ran when they were caught, when they were scared, when they didn't understand what would happen next. She didn't. She just looked at him. Not defiant. Not calm. Not even brave. Just still. Like she had already done the math and decided there was nowhere better to go. Harlan didn't move. Something in his chest tightened. Not from fear, but from the quiet weight of the moment. He'd expected something else. Noise, panic, excuses. Instead, he got silence and a child who looked like she had already learned what came after it. "You're the one who farms alone," she said. Her voice was rough and used, like something left out in the rain too long. Harlan blinked once, caught off guard. "I am," he answered. She nodded slightly, as if confirming something she already knew. Then she swallowed, her grip tightening on the bread for just a second before loosening again. "My mama needs help." Harlan didn't answer right away. The words sat between them, heavier than they should have been. "My mama needs help. Not don't hurt me. Not please." Just a statement, placed carefully, like something she'd practiced before saying out loud. The girl still held the bread, but she wasn't eating it. That alone told him everything he needed to know. Whatever waited out there mattered more than hunger. "What kind of help?" he asked finally. Her eyes didn't leave his. "She stepped in something bad," she said. "Iron. It closed on her leg. I tried to open it, but I can't." She lifted one hand slightly, thin fingers flexing as if reminding him of their limits. "You can." Harlan exhaled slowly. A trap. Had to be. He'd seen them before. Hunters setting iron jaws for wolves or boar. Cruel things that didn't care what they caught. If her mother had been in one since yesterday. "How long?" he asked. The girl tilted her head, Thinking, not guessing, counting. Since yesterday morning. I ran here before dark. Then I came back again today to check if she was still breathing. A pause. She is. But slower. Harlan felt that settle in his chest like a stone. And you left her there? I didn't leave, she said, sharper now. I ran. There's a difference. Her grip tightened on the bread. She told me not to bring humans. Said never. But I couldn't open it. And I wasn't going to sit there and watch her die because of a rule. There it was again. Not fear. Not panic. Decision. Harlan studied her properly now. She couldn't have been more than 7, maybe 8. But her eyes didn't match her size. They moved too carefully, measured too much. The kind of eyes that learned early that mistakes had consequences. What's your name? He asked. Rookie. That a real name? It's the one I have. She shifted slightly, adjusting her weight without standing. What's yours? Harlan. She repeated it under her breath once. Quiet. Memorizing. Then she looked back at him. You haven't told me no, she said. Harlan almost laughed at that. Not because it was funny, because it was true. He hadn't said no. He also hadn't said yes. You're asking me to walk into the woods with you, he said. To help someone who might try to kill me the second I get close. Rookie didn't argue. She might, she said simply. But she's more likely to die first. The bluntness of it caught him off guard. You're not afraid? He asked. I am, she said. But being afraid doesn't fix anything. She glanced at the bread in her hands, then back at him. You were going to throw this away. Harlan frowned slightly. Maybe. You had more than you needed, she continued. We don't. Her voice didn't rise, didn't plead. It just stated. So I took it. You could have knocked. She shook her head immediately. No. Why not? Because doors close. The way she said it made clear she wasn't guessing. She knew. Harlan looked past her for a moment, at the open barn door, at the quiet yard beyond it. The world outside hadn't changed. Same fences, same fields, same empty house waiting for him to return. But something had shifted anyway. He looked back at her. How far? He asked. 20 minutes, she said. If you're fast. And if I'm not. She held his gaze. Then she dies slower. No emotion, just truth. Harlan rubbed a hand over his face, feeling the weight of a choice he hadn't expected to make today. He could walk away, close the door, let the world stay small and manageable. The girl wouldn't stop him. That was the problem. She wouldn't even try. Harlan looked at the bread in her hands one more time, then at her. Show me, he said. Rookie didn't smile, didn't thank him. She just stood, slow and careful, like every movement had been measured before she made it. Then she turned toward the barn door. And this time, Harlan followed. Rookie moved the moment Harlan stepped out of the barn, like hesitation wasn't something she could afford. Bare feet hit the dirt, then the grass, then the thin animal paths that wound into the trees beyond his fields. She didn't look back to see if he followed. She assumed he would. Harlan grabbed the iron pry bar leaning against the fence on instinct, habit more than thought. If her mother was caught in a trap, he'd need leverage. Then he went after her. She was fast, not in the careless way children sometimes ran, but with purpose. Each step placed where the ground held. Each movement cutting through the underbrush like she'd memorized every branch and root. Harlan found himself pushing harder than he expected just to keep her in sight. You always run like this? He called, breath steady but working. Yes. That's not normal. Neither is starving, she answered. That shut him up. They crossed the edge of his land quickly, the familiar fence line disappearing behind them. The forest changed almost immediately, trees thicker, older, their branches knitting overhead until the light filtered down in thin, uneven strips. The air cooled, carrying the damp smell of earth and leaves that hadn't seen sun in days. How far? Harlan asked. 20 minutes, Rookie said. If you're fast. And if I'm not. She didn't slow, didn't turn. Then she dies slower. The words landed harder this time. Harlan adjusted his pace. The ground dipped into a shallow slope, roots twisting across the path like traps of their own. His boots slipped once, catching on loose soil, but Rookie moved through it without breaking rhythm. She ducked branches before they touched her, stepped over fallen logs instead of around them, her body working with the forest instead of against it. You've done this before, Harlan said. Twice, she replied. Yesterday. And this morning. Why come back this morning? To check if she was still breathing. There was no emotion in it. Just confirmation of a task completed. Harlan felt something tighten in his chest. They reached a narrow stream, water running cold and quick over smooth stones. Rookie didn't hesitate. She stepped straight through it, water splashing up around her ankles, then kept moving. Harlan followed, the chill biting through his boots. On the other side, the forest grew quieter, not empty. Watching, Harlan noticed it then, the absence of small sounds. No birds calling, no rustle of animals moving through brush. Just wind, slow and distant. And something else, a faint smell. Smoke. Old. Weak. But there. You made a fire, he said. Yes, Rookie answered. Small. You know that can be seen. I know. Then why risk it? Because she was cold. That was the end of that. The ground dropped again, sharper this time, leading into a narrow ravine. Rookie slowed slightly, picking her way down with careful steps. Harlan followed, using roots and rocks to steady himself. The smell grew stronger. Not just smoke now. Iron. Blood. Harlan felt it before he fully understood it. The way his body shifted, alert in a different way. Not danger to him. Something worse. Damage already done. We're close, Rookie said. Her voice was quieter now. Not afraid. Focused. They reached the bottom of the ravine, where the trees opened just enough to reveal a small clearing carved into the hillside. A rough hide curtain hung over a dark opening in the rock. Not quite a cave, but something shaped into one. A place meant to be hidden. And just beyond it, Harlan stopped. The trap sat in the clearing like a mistake that hadn't been corrected. Iron jaws, rusted but strong, clamped tight around something that didn't belong in it. Rookie didn't stop walking. She's there, she said. Harlan followed her gaze and saw the woman. The woman didn't look like something caught. She looked like something waiting. Harlan had seen animals in traps before, seen the panic in their eyes, the wild thrashing, the desperate, useless fight against iron that didn't care. This was different. The orc woman lay half-propped against the dirt, one hand braced behind her, the other gripping a stone so tightly her knuckles had gone pale beneath green skin. Her leg was locked in the trap's jaws just below the knee. The metal teeth sunk deep enough that the blood had stopped flowing freely, dark and thick where it had dried into the soil. But her eyes were sharp, awake. Watching him the moment he stepped into the clearing. Rookie. Her voice was low, strained, but steady enough to carry authority. The girl stopped beside her without hesitation. I brought him. I can see that. The woman's gaze didn't leave Harlan. What did I tell you about bringing strangers? That you'd rather die than owe one, Rookie said quietly. I decided that was a bad rule. A flicker passed across the woman's face. Anger, maybe, or something like fear that didn't belong to her. Harlan stepped forward slowly, keeping his hands visible, the pry bar hanging loose at his side. Ma'am, he said, voice calm. I'm not here to cause trouble. Your girl said you were caught. I've got the tools to fix that. The woman's grip tightened on the stone. Humans set these traps, she said. Forgive me if I don't trust one standing next to it. Fair, Harlan replied. But I'm not the one who said it. Silence stretched. The fire pit near the cave smoldered faintly, sending thin threads of smoke into the air. The smell of blood and iron hung heavier now, mixing with damp earth and something bitter, herbs, maybe, crushed nearby in a failed attempt at treatment. Rookie shifted slightly, placing herself between them in a way that didn't feel like defense. More like a bridge. He didn't bring a rope, she said. Or a weapon. Just that bar. The woman's eyes flicked to it. Then back to Harlan. You farm east of here, she said. It wasn't a question. Harlan nodded once. Name's Harlan Voss. I know your name. Her voice dropped a fraction. I know your land. I know you bake too much bread and throw half of it away every Tuesday. That stopped him. You've been watching me, he said. I've been surviving, she corrected. There's a difference. Rookie didn't look at him. Didn't need to. Harlan exhaled slowly. How long? Long enough to know you live alone, the woman said. Long enough to know no one would hear me if I killed you out here. The words were sharp, but they didn't feel like a threat. They felt like truth. Harlan nodded again. Then you also know I haven't come after you in all that time. Another pause. This one longer. The woman's grip on the stone loosened, just slightly. Pain flickered across her face, fast but unmistakable. Her leg trembled where the trap held it, the pressure of it cutting circulation just enough to keep her conscious and trapped in the same breath. You've been in that since yesterday? Harlan asked. She didn't answer. Rookie did. Yes. Harlan's jaw tightened. Then we don't have time for this. He stepped closer. The stone in the woman's hand lifted an inch. Stop. He stopped. Not because of the stone, because of the way she said it. Say what you're going to do, she said. Every step. No surprises. Harlan nodded. I'm going to set the pry bar between the jaws. Use leverage to force them open. When it releases, the blood's going to rush back. That's going to hurt worse than the trap itself. I know what pain feels like, she said flatly. I figured you might. Another beat. Then, do it. Harlan moved. He knelt beside the trap, close enough now to see the full damage. The metal teeth had punctured deep, tearing through fabric and skin alike. Swelling had already begun around the wound, angry and tight. Infection waiting. He wedged the pry bar into the hinge of the jaws, adjusted his grip, and pushed. The iron resisted, then groaned, then shifted. The woman didn't scream, but her fingers dug into the dirt hard enough to leave marks. Rookie knelt beside her, silent tears running down her face, her hand hovering just above her mother's arm. Close, but not touching, like she knew better than to interfere with the pain. Harlan pushed harder. The jaws opened with a sharp metallic snap. The leg came free. For a second, nothing moved. Then the woman's body jerked as circulation slammed back into place, her breath catching in her throat, jaw locking so tight Harlan thought her teeth might crack. Still no scream. Just control. Done, Harlan said quietly, pulling the pry bar back. The trap lay open beside them. Useless now. The woman sagged slightly against the ground, her strength finally slipping where it had been held too long. But her eyes, still sharp, still watching him. You had your chance, she said through gritted teeth. You didn't take it. Harlan met her gaze. Wasn't looking for one. Rookie finally touched her then, small hand gripping her arm. Mama, it's off. The woman closed her eyes for a brief second. Not in relief. In calculation. When she opened them again, they settled on Harlan with something new in them. Not trust, but not rejection either. Help me up, she said. It wasn't a request. It was a decision. Helping her stand was a mistake. Harlan knew at the moment she tried. The orc woman, Draver, though he hadn't heard her name yet, shifted her weight forward, one hand gripping the rock wall beside the cave, the other bracing against the ground. For a heartbeat, it almost worked. Her body rose, her shoulders squared, her jaw locked against the pain like she could force it into submission. Then her injured leg gave out. Not a stumble, a collapse. Her weight dropped hard, and if Harlan hadn't moved, she would have hit the ground full force. He caught her under the arm without thinking, steadying her before she fell completely. The reaction was immediate. The stone was in her hand again, pressed tight against his ribs. Don't. One word. Sharp. Breathless. Harlan froze, not because he was afraid, but because he understood exactly what that word meant to her. Not a threat. A boundary carved from something deeper than pride. I've got you, he said quietly. That's all. Her breathing was uneven now, the pain breaking through the control she'd been holding onto by sheer will. Up close, he could see it better. The gray under her skin, the tension in her shoulders, the way her body was fighting not just the injury, but the weakness that came with it. She studied his face, measured him. Then, slowly, the stone lowered. Inside, she said, before I fall again. Harlan didn't argue. He shifted his grip carefully, letting her lean on him just enough to move without feeling carried. That mattered. He could tell. Every inch of her resisted the idea of being helpless, even when her body was already there. Rookie moved ahead of them, pulling aside the hide curtain that covered the cave entrance. Watch the step, she said, like she'd said it 100 times before. The cave swallowed them in cool shadow. It was larger than it looked from outside. 2 chambers carved into the hillside, the walls shaped with intention, not accident. Shelves lined one side, filled with dried herbs, cloth, small tools. Everything placed with care. Everything earned. Harlan guided her to a low sleeping mat in the back chamber. She lowered herself onto it slowly, each movement controlled, deliberate, refusing to show more pain than necessary. But when her leg finally settled, she exhaled. Not relief. Release. Rookie was already moving, tending the fire, setting a kettle, her hands working with practiced efficiency that didn't belong to a child. You do this often? Harlan asked. Rookie didn't look up. Often enough. That sat heavy. Harlan crouched beside the injured leg, studying it properly now. The punctures were deep, the surrounding skin swollen and hot. Infection was already setting in, early, but certain if left alone. This needs cleaning, he said. And binding. You've got herbs, but I know what I have, the woman cut in. Her voice was steadier again. Guard back in place. Harlan nodded. Then you also know it's not enough. Silence stretched between them. Rookie poured hot water into a bowl, brought it over without being asked. Mama, she said softly. Let him. The woman didn't respond immediately. Her eyes shifted to her daughter. Something passed between them, something quiet, old, and heavier than the moment. Then she looked back at Harlan. You touch only what needs touching, she said. Nothing else. Fair. He started with the water, cleaning the wound carefully, rinsing away dried blood and dirt. The woman's hands gripped the edge of the mat, her broken fingers pressing into the fabric hard enough to tremble. That's when Harlan noticed them properly. Her hands. Not just rough, not just scarred. Wrong. The fingers didn't align the way they should. Some bent slightly off angle. Others thicker at the joints, healed badly. Not one injury. Many. Old. Deliberate. These weren't accidents, he said before he could stop himself. The air in the cave shifted instantly. Cold. The woman's hands pulled back toward her chest, hiding them like something she refused to have seen. My hands are not your concern. Someone broke them, Harlan said quietly. More than once. Her eyes snapped to his. Sharp again. Dangerous. Enough. Rookie went still by the fire. Harlan didn't push further. Didn't need to. The truth was already sitting between them. He finished cleaning the wound in silence, then reached for the cloth and herbs Rookie had set out. He wrapped the leg firmly, supporting it without cutting off what little circulation had returned. When he was done, he leaned back slightly. You're not walking on that tomorrow, he said. The woman gave a dry, humorless breath. Watch me. You try, you tear it worse. I've walked on worse. Maybe, Harlan said. Doesn't mean you should. Another pause. Then, you talk like you know pain. Harlan sat back on his heels. I know what happens when you ignore it. Her gaze held his for a long moment, then shifted. Not away, just less sharp. What's your name, he asked. She hesitated. Not long, but enough to matter. Draver. Harlan nodded. All right, Draver. She flexed her fingers slowly, testing them, the movement stiff but controlled. My hands remember more than they can do, she said quietly. That's the worst part. Harlan glanced at them again, at the way her grip still formed, even if imperfect. They still work, he said. Not like they used to. Different isn't the same as gone. Draver didn't respond, but she didn't argue either. Rookie sat beside her, leaning lightly against her side. He fixed it, she said. You're okay now. Draver looked down at her daughter. Something softened, just for a second. Then she looked back at Harlan. You helped, she said. That doesn't make you safe. Harlan nodded. Didn't ask to be. Another silence. But this one wasn't sharp. It just existed. After a moment, Harlan pushed himself to his feet. I'll come back tomorrow, he said. Change the bandage. Bring proper supplies. You don't need to, Draver replied. I know. That was the difference. She saw it. Didn't like it. Didn't refuse it either. Rookie looked up at him. You will come back? Harlan met her eyes. I will. Draver watched him closely, weighing that promise the way someone weighs something they've been burned by before. Bring soap, she said after a moment. We're out. Harlan gave a small nod. Anything else? Rookie spoke before her mother could answer. Something sweet. Draver exhaled through her nose. Didn't stop her. Harlan almost smiled. Sweet it is. He stepped toward the cave entrance, pulling the hide curtain aside. Evening light spilled in, soft and fading. Behind him, the cave felt different now. Not safe. Not yet. But no longer just a place surviving. Something had shifted. Small, but real. And as Harlan walked back into the woods, he realized something he hadn't felt in years. He had somewhere to return to tomorrow. Harlan woke before the sun, the way he always did, but for the first time in years it didn't feel like habit. It felt like purpose. The house was still the same. Quiet, hollow, carrying the faint echoes of a life that had ended 3 winters ago. Catherine's carving knife still sat where he'd left it. The table still held only one chair pulled out. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had. He didn't linger. He moved with intent, gathering what he needed. Clean cloth, boiled water sealed in a jug, a bar of soap, the small tin of sugar he hadn't touched in months, and a sack of oats he'd bought in the dark from the trading post before dawn. Simple things. Small things. But he knew now how much they mattered. The forest felt different on the return journey. Less empty. Less like something he was passing through, and more like something that led somewhere. Rookie was already waiting for him at the edge of the ravine, barefoot in the cold dirt, a water jug set beside her like she'd been there long enough to forget the weight of it. When she saw him, she didn't smile, but something in her shoulders eased. "You came," she said. "I said I would. Mama said maybe. And you?" "I counted," she replied. 7 reasons you would. For you wouldn't." Harlan raised an eyebrow. "Good odds. Good enough." She glanced at the sack in his hand. "Is that sugar? And soap? And oats?" Rookie closed her eyes for a second, breathing in like she could already taste it. "Mama's going to cry," she said quietly. "The good kind." That stayed with him as they walked. Draver was outside the cave when they arrived, seated because she had no choice, her injured legs stretched carefully in front of her. Her hair was braided tight, her posture controlled, but the strain showed in the set of her jaw. The stone sat beside her again, not in her hand this time, but close enough to reach. "Morning," she said, voice steady. "You're up early," Harlan replied. "I don't sleep well when I can't move." "That makes 2 of us." He set the supplies down without ceremony. Draver's eyes flicked to them, then back to him, measuring, always measuring. Her hand reached for the sack of oats, pressing into it like she needed to confirm it was real. "I asked for soap," she said. "You got more." That wasn't the agreement. Wasn't a transaction either. She didn't argue with that. Didn't thank him either. But she didn't push it away. That was enough. The morning settled into work. Harlan cleaned and re-wrapped her leg, slower this time, more careful. The swelling had worsened, but the wound was cleaner than he expected. Rookie had done what she could. Draver didn't make a sound while he worked, but her hands gripped the mat again, those broken fingers whitening with the effort of holding still. When he finished, she exhaled quietly. "Better," she admitted. "Not good," Harlan said. "But better's a start." He moved on to the other things without being asked. Refilled the water jug, checked the snare lines, reinforced the cave entrance where the wood had weakened. Work filled the space between them, making conversation unnecessary. It was easier that way. Around midday, something changed. Draver stood, carefully, stubbornly, and moved to the fire. She took the rabbit Harlan had pulled from a snare and didn't hang it to dry like before. Instead, she set it over the flames on a rough spit, letting the fat drip and hiss into the fire. Rookie went completely still. "We don't cook meat," she said. "We do today," Draver replied. "Why?" Draver's eyes flicked briefly toward Harlan. "Because we're not hiding from him." The meaning of that settled heavy and quiet. The smell filled the clearing, rich, warm, unfamiliar in a place that had lived on survival instead of living. Rookie stared at it like she didn't trust it to stay. When the meat was ready, Draver tore a piece and handed it to her. Rookie held it carefully, turning it in her hands, studying it like something new. Then she took a bite. Her eyes closed. "This is what it tastes like," she whispered. "Yes," Draver said softly. "We've been eating it wrong. We've been eating it safe." Rookie took another bite, slower this time, like she was learning something she didn't want to forget. Harlan sat across from them, eating in silence, watching a child experience something as simple as a hot meal like it was the first real thing she'd ever had. It hit him harder than he expected. "She counts everything," Draver said quietly, not looking at him. "I noticed. Steps, time, food, people, how long they stay, how long before they leave." Harlan glanced at Rookie. "What are you counting now?" Rookie looked down at her portion. "How many bites I have left?" "You're not full." "I'll be full when I'm done," she said. "Not before." Harlan nodded slowly. "You don't have to save it." Rookie looked up at him, eyes sharp in a way that didn't belong to her age. "Temporary things get saved." The words landed. Draver didn't interrupt, didn't soften it, because it was true. The day stretched quietly after that. No promises were made. No trust declared. Just small things, shared space, shared food, shared work, that built something neither of them named. When Harlan finally stood to leave, the light was already fading again. "I'll come back tomorrow," he said. Draver didn't look at him this time. "You said that yesterday." "And I did." "That doesn't mean you will again." Harlan considered that, then nodded once. "Fair." Rookie stepped closer, Bring more sugar? Harlan almost smiled. I'll see what I can do. He turned toward the trees. Behind him, the cave was no longer just a hiding place. And in front of him, the path home didn't feel empty anymore. For the first time in 3 years, Harlan wasn't just waking up to pass the day. He was waking up to return somewhere. Backslash. The horse didn't belong. Harlan knew that before he even reached the barn. It stood tied to the post like it owned the place, broad-chested, scarred along the flank, the kind of animal bred for war, not work. Its ears flicked once as Harlan approached, but it didn't startle. It watched him the way its rider likely did, measuring, patient, already certain of itself. That was the first warning. The second was the man leaning against the barn door. Orc, tall enough that the doorway looked too small for him. His skin was darker than Draver's, marked with ritual scars that weren't decoration, they were history. His arms were bare despite the cold, and his hands, unbroken, strong, untouched by the kind of damage Harlan had seen in that cave. Your Voss, the orc said. Not a question. Harlan didn't stop walking. Depends who's asking. Sulk, the man replied. Enforcer of the Iron Ridge. That name meant something. Harlan felt it in the way the air shifted. I'm looking for someone, Sulk continued, pushing off the barn wall slowly. An orc woman. Exiled. 2 years ago. She'd have a child with her. Harlan kept his pace steady. No hesitation. No glance toward the woods. Don't see many orcs around here, he said. Sulk's eye stayed on him. Flat. Unblinking. The kind of gaze that didn't rush because it didn't need to. Our scouts found signs, Sulk said. Old camps. Snare lines. Someone's been living in your eastern woods. Lots of things live out there, Harlan replied. Deer. Foxes. People passing through. Sulk took a step closer. Not aggressive. Just closer. If you've seen her, he said, you'll tell me. Harlan leaned one shoulder against the barn post, mirroring the stillness. What kind of business does the Iron Ridge have with an exiled woman? The kind that doesn't concern humans. It concerns me if it's on my land. A pause. Then Sulk smiled. It wasn't friendly. Your land, he said. Humans and their paper claims to dirt. Harlan shrugged slightly. It's kept me busy so far. Sulk studied him longer this time. Not just listening, evaluating. Looking for cracks. For the moment where a lie shifted under pressure. If she's here, Sulk said finally, you'll tell me. And if I don't? Sulk's head tilted just a fraction. Then I look, he said. And I don't look gently. That sat between them. Real. Harlan didn't move. Didn't rise to it. Good luck with that, he said evenly. Sulk held his gaze another second. Then turned. Mounted the horse in one smooth motion like the animal and the man were built for the same purpose. I'll be in the territory 3 days, he said. If she surfaces, you bring word. And if she doesn't? Sulk looked back once. Then, I find her anyway. He rode off without hurry. That was the worst part. A man in a rush could be outrun. A man with time? That was something else. Harlan stood in the yard long after the dust settled. 3 days. That was the measure now. Not of time. Of safety. He went inside the house, closed the door behind him, and for a moment just stood there, staring at the table, the chair, the quiet that had once felt normal. It didn't anymore. 3 days. He moved fast after that, grabbed what he could carry, food, cloth, the last of the clean bandages, Catherine's old knife without thinking why, and headed back toward the woods. No hesitation now. No space for it. The forest felt tighter this time. Like it knew. Like it was holding its breath. Rookie wasn't at the ravine when he reached it. That made his chest tighten. But when he dropped into the clearing, she was there, kneeling beside the fire, feeding it small sticks, her movements quick, efficient. She looked up the moment she heard him. You're early, she said. Where's your mother? Rookie's expression shifted. Not fear. Understanding. She knows, she said. Harlan stepped closer. Knows what? Rookie stood. That someone's coming. Draver stepped out of the cave behind her. She didn't need to ask. She read it on his face. Who, she said. Sulk, Harlan answered. Iron Ridge Enforcer. The name hit. Hard. The chisel in Draver's hand slipped. Hit the ground. The sound echoed louder than it should have. How long, she asked. 3 days. Draver closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them again, the fear was there, but buried under something harder. Then we leave tonight, she said. On that leg. Harlan shot back. I've walked worse. And you'll collapse halfway there. Better than being found here. Rookie stepped between them again. Small. Still. Thinking. Or, she said slowly, we don't stay here. Both adults looked at her. We go to the farmhouse. Silence. Harlan blinked once. That's not hiding. It's better, Rookie said. Walls. A door. People nearby. Draver shook her head immediately. If we're in his house, we're not invisible. You're not invisible here either, Harlan said. Sulk already knows someone's in the woods. That landed. Rookie looked at her mother. If he comes, he has to come to a door, she said. Not drag us out of a hole. Draver's jaw tightened. She looked at the cave, at the shelves she'd carved, at the fire pit. 2 years of survival sitting in front of her. Then she looked at her daughter. Then at Harlan. If this goes wrong, she said quietly, it goes wrong in the open. Harlan nodded once. Better than going wrong alone. A long silence followed. Then, pack what matters, Draver said. Rookie was already moving. Harlan stepped back into the clearing, giving them space. Inside the cave, he could hear it. The small, deliberate sounds of a life being taken apart. Not destroyed. Not abandoned. Just carried forward. And as the light faded over the ravine, Harlan realized something simple and dangerous at the same time. This wasn't about helping anymore. This was about choosing a side. They left the cave before the sky had fully decided to become morning. No fire. No noise. No second look. Draver moved slower than she wanted, faster than she should, her weight leaning into a branch Harlan had cut for her to use as a crutch. Every step cost her something, but she paid it without complaint. Rookie carried the small chest between pauses, stubborn about the weight, refusing help until Harlan quietly took it anyway, and she pretended not to notice. The cave stayed behind them. Dark. Empty. Finished. The walk to the farmhouse felt longer than it ever had. Not because of distance, because of what it meant. When the trees finally thinned and Harlan's land opened up around them, Rookie stopped for a second, just long enough to look at the house like it was something unreal. That's yours? She asked. Reckon it is, Harlan said. Draver didn't stop. Then let's not stand out here looking at it. They crossed the yard together. Harlan reached the door first, paused, then opened it. No hesitation, no warning, just a door that didn't close on them. Inside, the house smelled like wood, dust, and something faintly warm that had nothing to do with the fire. Rookie stepped in first, barefoot on the wooden floor, her steps slow, testing, like she expected it to disappear beneath her. Draver followed, more guarded, her eyes scanning everything. The windows, the corners, the exits. Even injured, even exhausted, she mapped the space in seconds. Harlan set the chest down near the wall. That room, he said, nodding toward the hallway. It's empty. Draver moved past him without a word, Rookie trailing behind her. Harlan stayed where he was, giving them space again, listening to the quiet shift of movement in a house that hadn't held more than one set of footsteps in years. Then, nothing. Too quiet. Harlan stepped into the hallway. Rookie was on the bed, not sitting, not lying, just touching it. Her fingers pressed into the blanket, then the pillow, then the mattress again, like she was trying to understand something she didn't have words for. Draver stood in the doorway, watching her, not interrupting. Mama, Rookie said softly, is this what beds are supposed to feel like? Draver swallowed once. Yes. Rookie lay down slowly, like the bed might break if she trusted it too fast. Then she turned her face into the pillow and stayed there, not moving. I don't want to go back, she said, voice muffled. You don't have to, Draver replied. Does that make me ungrateful? Draver stepped forward, sat on the edge of the bed, and pulled her gently closer despite the way her hands trembled. No, she said. It makes you honest. Harlan stepped back quietly, left them to it. In the kitchen, he moved without thinking, lighting the stove, pulling out what little he had, trying to make something that resembled breakfast. It wasn't good. The oats burned slightly, the tea was too weak, but he set the table anyway. 3 plates. 3 cups. It looked strange. Right. Wrong. All at once. When they came in, Draver stopped at the doorway again. You set 3 places, she said. There's 3 of us. No one set a place for me since, she didn't finish. Harlan shrugged lightly. Figured it was about time. Rookie climbed into a chair without waiting, staring at the food like it was something between miracle and mistake. Mama should cook, she said. Draver almost smiled. Almost. They ate. Quiet at first, then less quiet. Not conversation. Just presence. The kind that fills space without needing words. It lasted 2 days. On the third morning, the horse came back. Harlan saw it from the window this time. Didn't wait. Didn't hope. Sulk stood in the yard with 2 others behind him, all of them still, watching the house like they were already inside it. Draver stepped onto the porch beside Harlan. She didn't hide, didn't retreat. Her hands hung at her sides, broken and visible, the truth of them laid bare. Rookie stood in the doorway behind them. Small, watching, counting. She's here, Sulk said simply. Harlan didn't answer. Didn't need to. Draver did. I'm not coming back, she said. Sulk's eyes moved to her hands. Those belong to the clan, he said. You carry them as a reminder. Draver lifted them slightly. They're a reminder, she said. Just not the one you think. The other orcs shifted slightly behind him. Uneasy. Listening. Sulk's gaze hardened. The war chief wants you returned. The war chief broke every finger I had because I told him the truth, Draver said. He doesn't get to want anything from me. That's not how clan law works. That's because it's not law, she replied. It's control. The air tightened. Harlan could feel it. This wasn't a conversation. It was a line being drawn. You have 3 days, Sulk said finally. Then I take what I came for. You'll have to come through that door, Harlan said. Sulk looked at it. Then at him. Then at the town road beyond. More people watching now. Not many, but enough. He turned his horse. Left without another word. The others followed. The yard went quiet again. But not the same quiet. This one had weight. Harlan exhaled slowly. 3 days, he said. Draver nodded once. 3 days, she repeated. Behind them, the door stayed open. Not by accident. By choice. That night, no one slept the way people are supposed to. The house held quiet, but it wasn't empty anymore. It was thinking. Every creak of wood, every shift of wind against the walls felt like a question waiting for an answer none of them had yet. Harlan sat at the kitchen table with Catherine's old carving knife in his hand, turning it over slowly, not carving, just remembering what it felt like to make something instead of brace for what might break. Draver stood in the doorway for a long time before stepping in. You sit like that every night? She asked. Only when I don't have better things to do, Harlan replied. And now you do. Seems that way. She crossed the room carefully, her legs still stiff, and sat across from him. For a moment, neither spoke. The kind of silence that wasn't empty anymore, just full of things neither wanted to rush. Sulk won't stop, she said finally. 3 days wasn't mercy. It was time to prepare. I figured. He'll come back with more. Or worse. Orders he won't question. Harlan nodded. Then we give him something he can't ignore. Draver's eyes narrowed slightly. Like what? A reason not to take you. There is no reason strong enough in clan law. Then we don't use clan law. She studied him carefully. What are you planning? Harlan leaned back slightly. There's a man in town. Aldo. Runs the trading post. Keeps records of everything that passes through. Goods, deals, names. He's been doing it for 20 years. And if your war chief's as powerful as you say, he's been trading. Draver's expression didn't change. But something behind it did. Ven doesn't trade, she said flatly. He takes. Maybe, Harlan replied. But people like that don't just take. They profit. That word landed. Profit. Draver's fingers twitched slightly against the table. If there's proof, Harlan continued. Real proof. Something your own people can't ignore. It changes things. Not here. But with them. Draver leaned forward slowly. You think evidence matters to someone like Sulk? No, Harlan said. But it might matter to the ones he answers to. Or the ones who start questioning him. She went still. Thinking. Running through something deeper than the moment. My forge mark, she said quietly. Harlan frowned slightly. What about it? Every weapon I made carried it, she said. A stamp. Iron Ridge steel, but my work. My design. And if Van sold those weapons, she stopped. Didn't need to finish. They'd carry your mark, Harlan said. Draver nodded once. Slow. Controlled. He told the clan those weapons were for defense, she said. For our borders. For our enemies. And if they weren't? Harlan asked. Then he wasn't protecting us, she said. He was using us. Silence settled again. Heavier now. Not fear. Something sharper. Truth starting to take shape. Can Aldo prove it? She asked. He can prove what passed through his hands, Harlan said. And he writes everything down. Draver stood slowly, ignoring the strain in her leg. We go to him tomorrow, she said. You sure? No, she replied. But I'm done waiting to be hunted. That was answer enough. Morning came with a different kind of tension, less uncertainty, more direction. Harlan left early, heading into town alone while Draver stayed behind with Rookie. Not because she trusted the house, but because she trusted the door and the man who stood in front of it. All those shops smelled like paper, dust, and old wood. The man himself looked like he'd been part of the place longer than the shelves. Thin, careful, with eyes that noticed more than they let on. Harlan, Aldo said as he entered, "You don't come here unless you need something." "I do." Aldo nodded once. "Then you'll tell me plain. I need your ledger." That got his attention. "Depends what for." "War Chief fan," Harlan said. "Iron Ridge." Aldo didn't move, didn't blink, but something shifted. "That's not a small name to be asking about," he said. "Not a small problem either." A long pause. Then Aldo turned, walked to the back, and returned with a thick leather-bound book. He set it on the counter. Carefully. "You didn't get this from me," he said. "I didn't ask you for it," Harlan replied. Aldo almost smiled. They opened the ledger together. Page after page of precise writing, dates, quantities, buyers. Then, Iron Ridge, Draver's Mark. Again, and again, and again. Sold not just to allies, but to enemies. The same names repeating on both sides of the conflict. The same weapons. The same forge. Harlan exhaled slowly. "That's enough." "It's more than enough," Aldo said quietly. Back at the farmhouse, Draver stood on the porch when Harlan returned. She didn't ask. He handed her the ledger. She read it. Slowly, carefully. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from pain this time, but from recognition. "He sold us out," she said. Not loud, not angry, certain. Rookie stood beside her, watching. "What does it mean?" she asked. Draver closed the ledger. "It means," she said quietly, "we stop running." Harlan stepped up beside them. "And start standing," he added. Draver looked at him, then at the road, then at the door behind her. "Let him come back," she said. This time, she was ready. Sulk returned on the third day. Not early, not late. Exactly when he said he would. That was the kind of man he was. Harlan saw him first from the yard, the same steady figure on horseback, but this time alone. No backup, no extra presence. Just certainty riding straight toward the farmhouse like he already knew how it would end. Draver stepped onto the porch before Harlan could call for her. She didn't hide anymore, didn't stay behind the door. Her hands hung at her sides, broken, visible, unhidden. Rookie stood between them on the step, small but steady, eyes moving between the road and the man approaching, counting something only she understood. Sulk stopped a few feet from the porch. His gaze went first to Draver, then to her hands, then to the house. "You stayed," he said. It wasn't approval. It was confirmation. "I told you I would," Draver replied. "You were given time to prepare. I used it." Sulk dismounted slowly. No rush, no tension in his movement, just control. "Then we end this," he said. Harlan stepped forward slightly, placing himself at the edge of the porch. "Not yet," he said. Sulk's eyes shifted to him. "Flat again. You don't decide that." "No," Harlan said calmly. "But this does." He reached into his coat and pulled out the ledger. Held it up. Sulk didn't take it immediately. Didn't move. "What is that?" he asked. "Truth," Draver said. That word carried more weight than anything else that morning. Sulk stepped closer, took the ledger, opened it. At first, nothing changed. He turned one page, then another, then stopped. His eyes slowed, focused. The silence stretched, long enough for the wind to shift, long enough for the moment to settle into something irreversible. "These marks," he said quietly. "My forge," Draver replied. "Every blade listed there came from my hands." Sulk turned another page. The same names appeared. Again and again. Buyers from both sides of the border conflict. Dates overlapping. Deals repeating. "You armed them," Draver continued. "The enemies you sent us to fight. The raids you ordered. The battles we lost." Sulk didn't look up. "Not yet. You told the clan it was defense," she said. "That we were protecting our land." Another page turned. Slower this time. "You weren't protecting anything," she finished. "You were selling both sides the weapons to kill each other." The words didn't rise. They didn't need to. They cut clean. Sulk closed the ledger. But he didn't hand it back. His jaw tightened slightly, not anger. Something more complicated. Recognition. "This is human record," he said. "Clan law. Clan law doesn't erase truth. Draver interrupted. It just hides from it. Sulk's gaze lifted to her. Finally, for the first time since he arrived, he wasn't certain. You accuse a war chief, he said. I accuse a traitor, she replied. Silence again. Rookie shifted slightly, her hand brushing Draver's side. Not fear. Support. Sulk noticed. He noticed everything. How many knew? He asked. Enough to die for it, Draver said. And I was next. His eyes dropped briefly to her hands again. Broken. Deliberately. The evidence had always been there, just without context. Until now. One of the neighbors appeared at the edge of the road. Then another. Word traveled fast in small places. No one stepped forward. But no one left either. They watched. That mattered. Sulk looked at them. Then back at the house. Then at the ledger in his hands. This changes things, he said. It wasn't a denial. It wasn't acceptance. It was the space in between. Good, Harlan said. That's the point. Sulk studied him for a moment. Then Draver. Then Rookie. A long breath. Measured. Controlled. If this is true, he said slowly, then the exile order stands on a lie. It does, Draver replied. And if I take this back, he continued, lifting the ledger slightly, it doesn't just affect you. It affects all of you, she said. That was the part he hadn't said out loud. But now it was there. Sulk turned the ledger in his hands. Thinking. Calculating. Not like an enforcer anymore. Like a man standing at the edge of something bigger than orders. If you're lying, he said finally, I'll come back. Draver didn't flinch. I know. And next time, he added, I won't come alone. Next time, Harlan said quietly, you might not be coming for her. Sulk held his gaze, then gave the smallest nod. Not agreement. Not respect. But something close enough to matter. He mounted his horse. No more words. No threats. Just the decision carried with him as he turned and rode away. The yard stayed silent long after he disappeared. Rookie exhaled first. Did we win? She asked. Draver looked down at her. Then at the road. Then at the house behind her. No, she said. A pause. Then, we stopped losing. Harlan leaned against the porch post, watching the horizon where Sulk had vanished. The door behind them stayed open. Not because it was forgotten, but because it didn't need to be closed anymore. Some doors weren't meant to keep things out. Some were meant to prove. There was finally something worth staying for.